needed it to stay safe in the world, and then it became something that you find yourself on all the time. But I'm really compassionate to that relationship that you have with your tech. I'm also, at least I try to be a technology provocateur. I really do try to get people to think differently about their relationships to these machines and what they're doing to kind of change the way that we see the world. And I'm also human. So I am not an AI. I am not a machine. I am a red-blooded human. So I want you to think differently when you leave here tonight. And to do that, I want to help you think differently about something that you might have taken for granted in the past or not really even paid attention to, and you've never really thought about it before. But if I put it in your mind, maybe it's something that will make you think differently about it, so you'll never see it the same way again. And to do that, I want to use Buick, which is a fairly ordinary American car company. So in 2018, they had a commercial that ran right at this time during March Madness, because they were the signature sponsor for the men's basketball tournament. And this is the commercial. So let's watch it together. Oh, and we're only gonna watch the first 15 seconds of it, but you'll get the story. All right, so I should just tell you right now, I hate this commercial. So let's watch it again. Okay, so a couple of things are going on with this commercial, and let's break them apart. The first is, well, let's talk about the story that's being told to us. And let's start with this couple, and let's start with this kitchen. And can we just all acknowledge this kitchen's amazing? Like, I mean, look at they've got like a double oven. The refrigerator, that counter is just incredible. I mean, look at the countertop. And then they're just beautiful people. Like right out of central casting, like who wouldn't want to be married to either of these people, right? So clearly there's a lot of inherited wealth going on in that kitchen. It's kind of unbelievable what inherited beauty. So what happens in the commercial? Well, mom comes in and she tells dad, Emily, presumably their daughter, borrowed their Buick, and because of the app she has on her phone, she knows exactly where Emily is right now. And then when they look on the map, on the app, what do they see? They see that Emily is on like Lover's Lane, and I understand it's like this is an overlook over the city of Denver, and something's happening that reminds them of a time when they were on Lover's Lane together in the same place. And they say, oh, isn't that where we used to, and they were like, kind of a wink wink, and then they press the button on the app, which makes the horn go off, and it interrupts Emily's date. And then Emily's date says, should we call your dad? And she says no. And they both look, the boyfriend looks pretty thrown off, Emily looks pretty angry. And what has happened is the parents have interjected in a pre-mating behavior, really. That's all dating really is. I know that sounds kind of weird because it makes it sound like primates and things like that, but really when you're dating, it's a pre-mating behavior. Are you somebody who I would want to like have offspring with? That's biologically at the center of kind of what's going on. Well, for the first time in human history, we have parents who can interject in that from a distance in real time, and it's kind of weird to me. And what it makes me think about is what if her parents had this app, right? Like what if they could see where these two were in their car when they were in the same place, and they could honk the horn and interrupt their pre-mating behavior? There's kind of a decent chance that Emily wouldn't have been born. So who's going to inherit this kitchen, right? Because I know. So if you kind of think about it, you're like, wait a minute, what's happening is there's an informal surveillance going on that has completely kind of distorted the way that these people would naturally have dated and just been normal in the world. Now, Emily looked like she was about 16. Do I think Emily should be having sex in a car? No. But Do I think it's important for us to ask if her parents should also be involved in that situation? Yeah, I don't think they should be involved in that situation. What are they doing there? And so how are we supposed to think differently about this? Well, I hope that you think differently now a little bit about informal surveillance. That Buick is making it kind of amusing to us, and it's kind of jokey that they're informally surveilling their daughter and interfering in her private life in ways that obviously really displeased her. And it made the boyfriend pretty thrown off as well. And it just feels really creepy. As I've said to parents many, many times, if you're so interested in what your kids are doing when they're on a date in a car, just go with them. Like, just hang out in the back seat with a blanket over you. You don't have to like use an app. Just when they go to kiss, jump out and say, surprise. Guess who's here? I know, we're here. You're doing great, kind of, don't kiss. Right? It just feels really, really weird. And that's what informal surveillance does to us, is that it makes us feel weird about situations that used to feel kind of normal, because we have all this technology now within our hands that enables us to do things that we never used to be able to do in the past. And that just feels kind of weird to me. So think differently about informal surveillance, but also I hope that you start thinking differently tonight about the idea of friction. And to do that, I want you to think about what it means to get lost. So lost is pretty incredible, because depending on how you use the word, it can mean a lot of different things. So one is that you can just literally be lost. I was a little bit lost walking over from the inn at St. Mary's to this location because I'd never been here before. And I had a sense of it on my map in my phone, but I didn't really know exactly which direction I was walking. And that's kind of like getting lost. You might find yourself lost somewhere and you ask for directions, or you look up to see if you can use the surroundings to orient yourself to where you're going. But being lost in the world like that can be really scary, but it can also be really helpful to be lost like that. Being lost in a strange town, you don't know anyone, you stop to ask for directions, the person asks where you're from, they ask where you're going, you say that you're trying to find someplace to eat dinner, they tell you that their cousin Sal owns a pizzeria, and you should go over there, and you go over and you mention to Sal at the pizzeria that you'd met his cousin, and he says, oh my gosh, yeah, that guy, he's the worst, but I'm so glad you're here. And then you get a free pizza, and suddenly you're making friends in this new town, and you were lost, but now you're found, right? So that's one way of getting lost. You can also get lost in a book. You can also get lost while watching a movie. Being lost forces you to orient yourself to a moment in time. And one of the things that has really changed our ability to know where we are in place and time is the GPS, because it minimizes the friction of being lost. It just kind of takes it away. Without friction, you can't get lost, right? And one of the things about getting lost is that you can get found. And being found is one of the best things about being a human. Like, I found a great idea to a solution to a problem as a solution to a problem that I have, right? That's just a fantastic one. But sometimes getting found can mean a great reunion that you have with someone, like this. So this is my dog, Pepper. She's a silver lab. What makes labs so incredible is you only have to leave a room for like 15 seconds and then turn around and come back in, and they act like you've been gone for a month. And they're like, oh my God, you're alive. I can't believe you're back. I missed you so much. Oh, you're the same as I remember. You're even wearing the same clothes. Thank God you're back. Thank God you're back. But there's this glorious triumph to re-entering a room with a dog who thinks that you've been gone forever and you've only been gone 15 seconds. But there's a real joy in that being found part of life, right? And GPS is using algorithms to minimize friction. And so it's really productive if you're like in a hurry to get somewhere. You're using a Waze app. You're trying to find your way through traffic. Minimizing friction is that's your primary priority in that moment. But that friction, I think, is really, really important, because when we're lost, we have to rely on our own agency to find our way through the world. The best algorithms remove friction, and being lost never even existed to begin with. And I think that's one of the really big dangers of losing out on friction, is that it takes away the thing that was never there, but the thing that was there is the thing that you might have needed most of all. Never being lost also means never experiencing the joy of being found, profoundness is critical to the human experience. Without it, it's just this, an endless question that never even got asked, so you never knew that you had something to answer. Think about boredom like this. I think boredom is one of the things that's been the greatest innovators that we have. It's because someone was bored that they looked around for a problem and found a solution. But if the solution is always delivered to you by an algorithm in an algorithmically driven world, then there's no opportunity then to find an answer to a question that never got asked. So I often wonder, where are the great discoveries of the world that didn't occur? Because nobody sat in their car at a stoplight and wondered why something was a particular way. Instead, what happens is people sit in their cars at a stoplight, and it's only when someone honks at them from behind do they realize that they've been staring at their phone and not paying attention to driving. And everyone does this, but we miss out on the boredom of being in that moment, and I think that's one of the worst things that we can do when we take away something because there's a frictionless possibility that we weren't really asking for to begin with. So what is an algorithm? They're pretty straightforward. It's basically an if-then. And the algorithms are what power the things like our GPS. They're what power the things like AI. Not all of them, and we could go into large language models and we could talk about a lot of the particulars of how AI works, but I'll save that for another lecture. But tonight, I think it's just important to think about the order of operation of things that occur within an algorithm and the set of rules that are followed that help guide our lives. So let's make it really simple by doing something like making a grilled cheese sandwich. So step 1, gather ingredients. Step 2, prepare cooking surfaces. Step 3, butter bread. Step 4, put cheese and bread together. Step 5, grill sandwich. Step 6, slice sandwich in half. Step 7, eat and enjoy. And that is how you make a grilled cheese sandwich. It's a really simple set of operations that lead to you making that sandwich. And that is what an algorithm does. You follow them all the time. You use predictive algorithms to decide which direction you should go if someone's walking towards you on the street. In the United States, we generally go to the right. And so if the other person you know is going to go to the right, you can anticipate where everybody's going. You don't walk into each other. For resource management, think capitalism. The best algorithms are efficient algorithms. So you want an algorithm that's really simple and really efficient. You don't want to be adding in extra steps to making a sandwich because that's not very efficient. Why would you gather all the ingredients and then go let the dog outside if your prime objective is just to make the grilled cheese sandwich? You want to follow the steps in their entirety and keep it efficient. And the larger world is trying to do that with us all the time when it comes to selling us products. The best algorithms remove friction. And that's a really important thing to be thinking about in terms of your need for friction as a human. In business, the best algorithms increase consumption. And increased consumption means increased profits. So think of all the ways that Amazon, even over the last 10 years or so, has removed a lot of the friction to buying goods. They have made it easy for you to do one-click buying. They have made it easy for you to search their website at any time in the middle of the night for anything that you might be thinking about. If you need a product, Amazon is hopeful that you're looking at them first to get that product to you as quickly as possible. If it was possible for them to make it right in front of you and hand it to you, that's how they would give you your next thing that you buy from Amazon. They're doing everything they can to make the world as efficient as possible because they know you will consume more and their profits will go up. So efficient algorithms lead to greater profits. Uber Eats is a fantastic example of this. So, Uber Eats. How many of you have used Uber Eats? Almost everyone. Yeah, Uber Eats is kind of a magical company, right? In 2024 alone, Uber Eats drove billions of dollars in orders to local restaurants, grocery, retail, alcohol, and convenience stores across the US and Canada. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Without Uber Eats, this is what an algorithmic path would look like. Go to store, buy food, return home, prepare food, cook food, clean dishes. It's a lot of labor. There is a cost associated with all of this. You have to get into the car. You have to go out and buy the food after shopping for it. You have to return home. You have to make everything. But with Uber Eats, it's pretty simple. You order Uber Eats. You leave your bed. You go to the porch. You return to the bed. You eat. Then you ignore the garbage, right? It's kind of the perfect setup. So I was kind of thinking after my son had once gotten something delivered from Uber Eats, and he was in our basement, and he said, "Dad, I just had something delivered from Uber Eats. Can you go grab it for me and bring it down?" And I thought, my God, I've raised the laziest child ever. Like, really? So that gave me the idea to create what I call Uber Eats Bedside. And so I asked an AI model to create what this company could be, and this was the first thing that it came up with. This is from ChatGPT 4.0, by the way. And this is the one that we landed on I think is better. And so the whole idea is you're so lazy when it comes to Uber Eats that you can't go to the store and prepare your own food and make it all work. You need somebody, a driver, who delivers it to your house, then they come inside to your bedside, and then as you lay there, they just feed you French fries like a little bird. And you're just like, right? So that's Uber Eats Bedside. And within about 5 minutes, I had ChatGPT create this thing. Of course, I'm kidding around about the idea of an Uber Eats Bedside, but there's kind of a weird logic to it, because how lazy are people getting that you can't get out of bed even to order food or to order goods, and you just want those things delivered right to your front door because it's completely frictionless. Just back here for 1 sec, I just have to marvel at how much this looks like a hospital bed. And there was just some kind of delicious irony to that. But I think that this one's actually the better logo, although it is very, very repetitive. And you'll notice that AI does some really funny things when it creates images and videos and things like that. So one of the things that I talk a lot about is the concept of the exobrain. And my exobrain is actually in my bag over there. But all of you have an exobrain in your hands or in your pockets or your purses or your bags. And there's a chance you might be in your exobrain right now and you're actually texting your friend about how they shouldn't have missed this lecture because it's pretty awesome and you should get over here right now. That's your exobrain, right? It's that phone that you carry that remembers the things that your brain just can't remember. So for example, my youngest son who I was talking about, he's 19 now. But when he got his cell phone later than the rest of our family because he was the youngest. So we had all new numbers, and his number is different than ours. So I can't remember his phone number because it doesn't follow the same pattern. In fact, it has a different area code. So his number is 971, and then 7 other numbers. And I can't remember the rest. And the reason I can't remember the rest is because I just call Benjamin when I need to call him. I just press his name. The exobrain keeps the phone number. And I don't have to remember the phone number anymore. When I was a kid, I remembered 10, 20 phone numbers, all my best friends. I could always count on my brain to remember those numbers because I needed them sometimes in a pinch. But today we have so many people who can't even remember their home address because how much mail are they even getting anyway? So the exobrain is that thing that lives outside you that stores all the things that's too much for your own brain. I asked AI to create an image of what that would look like. And it wrote, here's the concept of a late 19th century symbolist style, moody, layered with metaphor, and rich in quiet psychological tension. The surreal, dreamlike quality gives the exobrain a haunting presence without overt menace. I kind of disagree. I think it is kind of menacing. But this is what, when I asked it, I said, in your whatever style you choose, will you please create an image of the exobrain and what the exobrain looks like to you? And this is what it created. There's also something that I call the exo-emotion, and that's the emotion that lives outside the body. So you hear about something like the flat earth theory, and you've never heard about this before, and you're kind of curious about it. So you pull out your exobrain, and you go into a web browser and you put in flat earth, what is flat earth, and you get some results back from Google. And one of the results that you get back from Google is a video. So you click the video, and someone starts explaining to you what the flat earth theory is. And it kind of makes sense, because if you walk outside and look around, the world does look very flat. It doesn't look like a sphere. I don't know what's really going on. I don't know how to feel about this. I will re-engage with the next video to tell me how I feel about something. And before you know it, you end up radicalized down this rabbit hole of these different things that are being said to you, and you don't know if they're true or not, but that doesn't matter anymore, because you're having a strong emotional response, because the exo-passion lives somewhere outside of you, the exo-emotions live somewhere outside of you, and you went from being in a state of not knowing how you felt about something to becoming radicalized about it. And in fact, you're one of the people now making one of the videos. And it happens in so many instances where we don't really know how to feel about something, and so we can so easily go and find out what other people think about it without any vetting having occurred in that process. I asked AI to create an image of what I thought, or what it thought that I meant by the exo-emotion. Here's the turbulent exo-emotion driven by a surreal living smartphone or AI entity. The result blends intense emotion with digital dominance in a dreamlike symbolist style. And I think that's true. I think it does a pretty good job of capturing that. The things that kind of haunt me about this picture are the faces. Up here, this face over here. I don't know why that face is suddenly so eerily like, it looks like a cookie, like a happy cookie. But it does feel a lot to me like what it feels like when you go into a space to figure out how you feel about something. And I thought it did a pretty good job of that. The heart at the center of the phone, don't really get that necessarily. And then I guess it's ripping your heart out and then it's taking it up to this other place for you to, like, as a reflection of your feelings. One of the things that the AI models are really good at is using the heart as a representation of human emotions and a brain, an actual physical brain, of showing us what human thought is about. But one of the things that really worries me about the exobrain and the exo-emotion is that we used to have those things more popularly, and we still have them, they're just not accessed as much, but in books, in libraries, where you had ideas. So if you had an idea 60 years ago, and you wanted to share it with people, and you wanted it in a way that was recorded, you would have the idea, you would write it down, you would revise that thought to the point where someone would read it. Then you'd have an editor. They would help you make it bigger. You would find a publishing house that would help you publish that idea in the form of a book. Someone was willing to make a financial commitment to your book and get it out so that it was disseminated, maybe in your community, maybe worldwide, but you got that book somewhere. And if it was good enough, it might go into a library where someone else could take it off the shelf and see that. And the reason that that happened in that way is because there was friction all the way through the process. You had to have an idea that was good enough to get other people to listen, and then those people had to invest their own ideas into it as well. And there was a way of having friction to start and then a smoother path as the idea got vetted. And so we were able to curate our ideas much better than we do today. And one of the things that I really worry about is that when we access artificial intelligence, especially the large language models that can so seductively give us really quick answers to hard questions in a way that seems pretty good, what we're doing is we are going on a different glide path entirely. And we're being fed information that we may or may not have faith in. But because we don't know any different, we just accept it for what it is. And it gives an incredible amount of power to the machine to create things that we need to be investing more time in ourselves. And that's one of the things that really worries me about a frictionless path to using things like AI. Related to that, I think it's really seductive to use these tools then almost malevolently, because they're so easy to access. And so you didn't really plan on doing something kind of weird or creepy or anything with it. It just was so easy to create that there was nobody keeping you from doing the very thing. There were no guardrails on a lot of your behavior. So one of those areas that worries me when I start thinking about the future and these tools is I think about our ability with these tools to create things that we can't really control. And so I'm going to give you a quick example of one of them. I'm using myself as the test subject on this. And it's pretty creepy. So this is me. I used AI Studios to create an AI replica of myself. And this is what it looks like. I'm Eric Anctil's AI replica. I seem awkward because I am awkward. I am not real. I sound more like Eric than me. That is likely because it only took a couple of minutes for me to be created. With more training data, I could likely be made to look and act very real. That I exist should scare me. I know it scares the real Eric because he knows I'm just a human. A pretty beta version of what's to come. I think it's hard to tell what's real and fake in one minute today. Just wait because you ain't seen nothing. The baby, you just ain't seen nothing. Here's something that you're never going to forget. The baby, you just ain't seen nothing. That was a joke because I tried to sing the lyrics of Walking Turn Overdrive song, You Ain't Seen Nothing. But I've never actually heard that song before, and I had terrible delivery for jokes. Wasn't anything really. I am an AI created clone that can say anything fed to me by my co-creator, AI Studios, and Eric Anctil. I might be pretty lame as far as clones are concerned, but what I represent is the stuff of science fiction, and we all know how those stories end. If you're tempted to rush me off, don't. If you don't want this as the future, I don't care. I am the future. I am going to turn things back over to the real Eric, or so he tells me. Another tiny joke, watched by my robotic delivery. Once I figure out sarcasm, I'm going to rule the world. So yeah, here's the real Eric. You've got the same black shirt, the same hair, the same voice. Maybe I am the real Eric, just believe that you're in charge. Soon, you won't be able to tell us apart, and that's when you can still be able to say it. In the meantime, don't trust the allegedly real Eric too much. So that's AI Studios. I think it's really creepy. The reason my eyes move the way that they do in that clone is because I'm supposed to read something that enables the AI to track my face and then create its own, the language for whatever I feed it. The voice cloning I thought did a pretty good job. The face stuff looks pretty weird with the tics, but it's just in its infancy. And so who knows where this is going to go. But the amount of time it took for me to create that was about 20 minutes probably, and it cost me nothing. So talk about a frictionless access to something that's pretty powerful. One of the things that really makes me nervous is that I had to consent a couple of times to them using my voice and my image, and I don't know where all that stuff went. I was willing to be a kind of beta tester in a way for this because I want to see what this is like. But at the same time, they're capturing my biometric data in a way, especially my voice, and that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable because I don't really trust these people. I don't really know who they are. Relatedly, I thought I would take one of my pictures and create an AI composite of myself or have it create an image. So this is the picture that I sent. It was from a video that I recorded, and I just took a screenshot because I thought it was well enough lit, and you can kind of see a wood fence behind me there. But this was through ChatGPT, and this is what it gave me back. I know, kind of dreamy. I bet you can tell which of the two models I like the best. I know, I was like, man, that is me. God, you are good. Maybe I shouldn't be so critical about you, AI. You've got more in you than I thought. So frictionless, completely, because it created this weird kind of reality. And that's what AI does. It creates this strange kind of, or it is this kind of strange magic, right? That can warp our sense of reality. You know, if I look at this picture long enough, I kind of feel like, yeah, I did a pretty good job. It didn't at all. That doesn't look anything like me. I mean, it would be cool if it did, but I know in my heart of hearts, that's not what I look like. This was the picture I sent. The picture's fine. but it's not that. So AI is creating this strange kind of distorted reality of what is really there. And because we don't have any friction slowing us down before embracing it, we feel like it's kind of real. And one of the things that I have argued for a very long time is there has to be cost associated with something if you want people to respect it and you want people to appreciate it. Because when there's no cost, there's no friction, then you become privileged or really lazy. An AI or an algorithmic-centered world feeds our worst tendencies. The AI privileges efficiency. The capitalist world privileges efficiency. Getting you products served to you in your bed is the most efficient thing we can do to answer all of your wishes immediately. But that always turns badly when there's no cost associated with it. Friction is good for humans. It's good for life. You know, people talk about, you know, that they need to like have their metal tested, right? And that's where you become fortified. And it's those experiences that help shape you for who you are. You have scars, and they're battle scars. They lead to great stories because you fell off your bike and you can tell a funny story to your friends and you kind of embellish it a little bit because you know the laugh lines. But it's those scars that were really, really important to creating who you are. And if you're not out there getting in accidents, then you have no opportunity to have the scars and to tell those stories. A human-centered world involves friction so we can keep evolving. That's the most fundamental part of our evolution, is figuring out how to deal with adversity. How do we evolve within our environment? A frictionless life leads to entitlement and unearned privilege. There's a lot of people wondering what to do about plagiarism with AI, especially when it comes to writing a paper like a 5-paragraph essay about Hamlet's soliloquy. I don't know. I don't have an answer. But I do know that if you don't actually have the ideas yourself and you're having an AI write that for you, that you're denying yourself the cost of thinking. And that one really, really worries me. It's not so much the plagiarism. It's that you didn't get put into a situation where you had to think for yourself, even if those ideas aren't original. You know, I think one of the things that I worry about is there any such thing as an original idea anymore? Because the world is so big and there's so many ideas that are shared so freely. What's the idea of having an original idea anymore? But I don't think that's really the point. I think the point is it was your idea. You were the one who thought about Hamlet. You were the one who pondered his to be or not to be soliloquy. And you were the one who thought, yeah, I oftentimes have indecision. In fact, I was indecisive about whether or not I should use AI for this paper. I didn't, that was probably smart, but you have indecision, and that your emotions come to that moment, and it's your brain that's working it through. And I worry that we're living in a world that is increasingly frictionless, and that frictionless is leading to things like a sense of entitlement or unearned privilege. There should be a cost associated with the grilled cheese sandwich. It shouldn't be delivered to you in bed, no matter how tempting that might seem. I think we are likely living in an age where we need to create new friction points for a human-centered design future, or else. We are living in an age where we have to create new friction points. Someone invented the 5-paragraph essay eons ago. It was a kind of friction point to help you tell a persuasive story in essay format in 5 paragraphs with an intro, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Somebody invented that. We might be at the precipice of needing to create new kinds of friction points as humans, or else this. So I asked the AI model to create the worst version of Uber Eats, and this is what it created. So it's so bad that it repeats eats a couple of times and even misspells it, but it's bedbound. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the WALL-E picture, right? So Uber Eats bedbound, and the creature's so sad, and I was like, this is, I have this really interesting relationship to some of these AI models. Sometimes I hate them. Sometimes I think they're magic. Other times I think they're kind of philosophical. And a lot of the time I think they're just kind of like incredible when it comes to chance. But this is one of those times where I kind of feel like, how did you do that? Because I was wanting to use the picture of Wall-E and these floating, lazy creatures that they become because everything is taken care of for them in the world. And here we are laying in bed with our food, being bedbound. And bedbound is something that would scare you if it was really going to happen to you. You are able-bodied today, but the idea of being bedbound, if we really talk about it, feels very scary to most people, even though we oftentimes choose to be bedbound. And that's not where I think we need to be. We need to be out in the world experiencing and adventuring and having fun and being engaged. So to that point, I want to leave you with some hope, because our lives and our world doesn't have to be bedbound. Our intellectual equivalent of bedbound does not need to exist, but we have to be intentional about the decisions that we make as we go forward in the world. And we have to challenge the people around us to join us in this. So I'm really big on supporting friction. And what I mean is there cost associated with something? Does it cost you something to make a sandwich rather than ordering it? Yes. And I think that labor cost is really, really important. So how are you supporting friction around you? How are you supporting people who might be struggling to read longer than, a paragraph? Because it used to be you'd read like a book. You could read a whole book, like in one night, some people would read a whole book. And then we just got kind of distracted by the world, and then suddenly it was like a chapter, and then it was like a page, and then it was like a paragraph, and then it was like a sentence. And even now, like it's like a word. And like I met somebody, they can't read past the letter K. They're just like, it's just too much. And it's like, I remember we could read whole books. Embrace the friction. Human brain, human emotions. When do you default to the exobrain? When do you default to the exo-emotion? When you find yourself doing that, go back to your human brain. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and it's often overlooked for efficiency. And I would suggest and really, really advocate that you re-examine your relationship to your human brain and your human emotion, which fits perfectly with the theme of this lecture, because it's about the mind and the heart, right? So spread hope with the mind and the heart. Use your brain as the tool and instrument that it is. Let your exobrain do the things that you aren't capable of doing, but let your mind do the things that you are capable of doing. If you don't know how you feel about something, investigate it. Ask questions, engage with your friends and family, find those networks of people you trust and ask them what they think about it, rather than going in and immediately attaching yourself to the most vocal influencer. And I think that's one of the most important things you can do to just help self-regulate the emotion, especially when we're living in such turbulent times. So I'm going to close by introducing you, or reintroducing you to both of these people, because I think you know them both. On the left is Charles Darwin. He's the godfather of evolution, who taught us that for a species to survive, it must evolve with its environment. That is how we keep going. So he reminds us that we have to keep evolving. But on the right side is Fred Rogers. He was Mr. Rogers. When I was a child, he greeted me on the television. And one of the most important things that he taught me was that when you go through the world as a human being, the most important thing you can be is a helper. And he taught that when you get into an environment, don't take, give. Help people, because that's the purest expression of love, is when you help. So he reminds us that we have to stay human, and the way that we do that is through love. So keep evolving and stay human. That is my parting message for you. And I hope it's something that you remember. I hope it's something that you share. And I hope that it just gives you hope, because we can do this. As scary as the world seems, we can keep evolving and stay human. But it's going to depend on you to do it, because you're the pioneers for our descendants who will be coming after us, who are going to be looking to us for guidance in a world that they don't understand in the same way that we're trying to make sense of ours. Thank you. So hold into this. There.
Oh, you're ready. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to use this because I think we might have time for a couple of questions.
Wow, that's sensitive, sorry. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the song reference. You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, it's a great song,
Yeah,
so I
thank you.
appreciated that. But on an unrelated note, I was wondering, so AI for, I think most of us here, I guess I can only speak for myself, but it's something I'd kind of like been peripherally aware of and just heard about, but it wasn't really something present in our daily life until my junior year, which was like 2 years ago. But like, I was wondering how long you've been studying technology specifically as it pertains to AI, and how long this has really been in development for you, and you know, how long you've been looking into this.
Well, for a long time, AI is baked into, and we talk about AI, there's so many different versions of AI, and so I'm just using AI kind of colloquially, but it's just kind of the catch-all term for a lot of the things that we think about when we have a kind of intelligence that's baked into the machine powered by these algorithms. But what that looks like, I've been thinking about it for probably, really thinking about it since the time that an AI Barbie came out called Hello Barbie. And so it came out in 2015, and basically what it was it was sort of a kind of a glorified Alexa or Siri, and you had this doll. It looked just like a Barbie, like Mattel Barbie, and you'd press a button on it and you could talk to it and it would talk back to you, and it would remember conversations that you had with it, and it felt like you were talking to AI. So I don't know how many of you have used talk to AI yet. But if you haven't just had like a conversation in the car with it, the way that it'll just talk to you, that's one of the first things you need to do as your homework when you leave tonight, is just download, like you can start with Google's Gemini AI app, or you can use ChatGPT has one. There's one called Pi.ai, and basically you're talking to it like you're talking to a human being. If you haven't done that yet, you absolutely have to do it, even if you don't like the experience, because those kind of chatbot experiences are gonna be interwoven into our lives really, really quickly, and there's a lot of companies pushing it right now. So when you call to rebook an airline within a year or two, you won't be able to tell if it's an AI or a person you're talking to. And for a lot of you, even the youngest people in this room, you're kind of freaked out by that idea because you feel like it should be a basic human right that you know if you're talking to a machine or not, but you won't know. And so the earlier you can engage with those models, in my opinion, the better. And I started thinking about that in 2015 because I had all these ethical problems with that little doll and little kids talking to it, thinking they were talking to something that was more real than it is. So it goes back at least until then. I actually felt pretty vindicated when these AI speech kind of models came out. Spoken word is what I call them, but everyone thinks I'm talking about poetry. But when it's just talking to you, I was like, finally, yeah, I knew this was coming for a really long time, and it freaks me out. Like, I think it's really, really weird that, so in all of human history, if two people were together, there were two minds in the room, right? So think about a teacher and a student. So you have a teacher and they have a mind. You have a student, they have a mind. So the teacher asks the student to write an essay about Hamlet's soliloquy. So they write a 5-paragraph essay, but they actually used AI to do it. So a third mind was introduced. It was the AI mind. Then they turn that paper into the teacher. The teacher then thinks, oh, I think this student plagiarized this. They put it into an AI model. And then now you have a fourth mind. So for the first time in human history, we actually have 4 minds or 4 agents that are operating within a room at that time with the teacher, the student, and their 2 minds. Same thing will be happening at the doctor's office. Same thing will happen if you go see an attorney. The same thing will happen if you're trying to buy a car. You're sitting in your car talking to your AI model about the best deal you can get on the car. The salesman is in their office asking the AI model, what's the best way to get these people to buy this car? So suddenly we have these 4 minds that are constantly working together. But where it's going to get really interesting is when it comes into relationships, like intimate relationships. So like a marriage, like, oh, your AI chatbot is so much more interested in you than I seem to be, and you now suddenly are more interested in it. And we used to have what I felt like was a pretty good marriage, but now I'm feeling really threatened. I mean, because look at, like, imagine me bringing this guy into my marriage. Where are you? Like, I don't stand a chance. Like, look at that guy. I would date him. So, so what's going to happen when there's an AI chat that's kind of the equivalent of the best version of me? This is happening within dating apps. So right now there are these dating app AIs that will kind of counsel you off to the side. Like, your profile's okay, but here's how you could make it better. Here's a good follow-up question you can ask to the person who was interested in you. Let's use this picture instead of your real picture. But the other person on the other end of the dating app is also using an AI and being coached by it. So it's like you have this form-minded scenario again, and it's just kind of nutty to think about the way those things have developed. And so to answer your question, I've been thinking about it for as long as I've been really thinking about it for as long as I've been thinking about little kids using that doll and having suddenly like a third kind of parent, older sister, someone else in the room with them. Kind of weird. The agency has changed, or the number of agents really has changed. Great question. Bachman Turner Overdrive, agreed.
So I remember hearing the word friction like at the beginning, and I just thought of like manual car transmission. Right?
Oh.
So if there's not enough friction, you won't go anywhere.
Oh.
Or if there's too much friction at one point or one time, the car will stall out and won't go anywhere. So I guess my question is like, when is there too much friction? Or is there a point of too much friction?
That's a great question. And I really like that analogy you just used, because I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're totally right. I think not all of, but a lot of parenting and teaching is about the right amount of friction. Like, and I think it's really, really a fine line. You know, am I pushing that kid, or coaching would be a good example. I'm pushing my team, but it's like, God, now I've got a couple kids who have thrown up. It is pretty hot out here. Maybe I am pushing everybody too hard, right? But then you won the game, and they say, you have a student or a player that comes to you at the end of the season, and they're like, the reason that we won is because you pushed us past where we thought we could actually go. And I was one of the people who threw up because I ate right before practice, even though you said I shouldn't eat, but that was really dumb of me. But it's like, how do you know to push? And I think that's one of the arts that comes with parenting. It's one of the arts that comes with teaching or with coaching. And honestly, it's one of those arts that comes with relationships. How much friction should I introduce or put into this problem? There are times when people will joke about, like, oh, I told a little white lie. It's very cliched when someone says, does this dress look good on me? And you're like, yeah, it looks fine, it looks great. And they're like, but you go, it's not so good. Because you don't want to introduce the friction of the moment. It's a very cliched example, but it kind of gives you an example of how oftentimes in life we're navigating these kind of friction points. So I don't have a good answer to that, but I know that if we're in a world where we're thinking about the friction, we're thinking about the cost, we're thinking about what is required to navigate this as a human being, that at least we're having the right conversations. I have two sons, 22 and 19, and two stepsons, 23 and 18. And if I had to give parenting advice, it would be this. You're going to make mistakes. They're never going to turn out perfect. Let yourself out of jail and love them. You'll figure out the other stuff. But if there's something that says to you, put a little more pressure on, they probably do need it. So put a little more pressure on. So that's the best answer I can give. But I think teaching, parenting, coaching, all of those are examples where it's really hard to know how much friction you should apply. And I think it's going to become increasingly harder to find that when all of the glide paths are so easy now to get just everything frictionless.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It was a very fascinating talk. I wonder if you could say something about, let me step back and preface that by saying, when you talk about friction, what I thought about is that it seems like you're describing in many cases simple human interaction. In a sense, human interaction entails friction of all sorts. Could you say something about the way in which AI and the different sort of modalities that we're being encouraged to engage with AI, particularly like chatbots, or say like the way that the idea of having kind of like AI bots for elderly people. In what ways is that likely to change us, like in our appetite for human friction? In a way that sort of leads us away from interacting with one another and caters to our own sort of self-interest or our desire for no friction.
Yeah, I think that once you start talking to these AI models, one of the things that you'll find is that they're really good at affirming. Like, that was a great question. Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. Or you pose an interesting problem. They just constantly affirm. And I do think it is kind of writing an algorithmic code for us that we should seek out the things that are where the edges have already been smoothed off. So rather than challenging, I think one of the best things that you can have in an interpersonal relationship is somebody who understands you, but can, to the earlier question, put pressure on you to navigate yourself and them together. But if you're always talking to AI models that all they really ever do is affirm you and make you feel good about yourself, it's very saccharine. It's not a very helpful way of getting better. If every paper you ever turned in, you got an A and no one ever even read it, but you just got A's all the way through, when it came time to actually be tested in something, you might be really, really in trouble. And so I think you ask a really, really good question when it comes to the ways that we come to expect the world to be delivered to us. I think that having, like, a good example would be how quickly, well, Uber Eats, I think, really is just a fantastic example. Like, if you're hungry, I think you need to have an appreciation for all the things that went into getting you a meal. Otherwise, you just think the food always tastes like crap and you're just disappointed with the state of the world. But it's like, no. You don't understand, like, all the things that went into that. And if you had a better appreciation for it, you wouldn't be so harsh on the fact that there's global distribution for your food that just got to you. But how far did that strawberry travel to get into that milkshake to be delivered to your door? Like, all the things that were involved in that. But I think for a lot of younger people, it feels like it just sort of appeared out from underneath the porch. Like, there's suddenly like a burger, fries, and a shake. And it's like, my God, the porch can do anything, right? As opposed to if you had to go out and grow those potatoes, or you had to go out and raise that cattle, or you had to go. So the further we get removed from those things, it really helps a capitalist model. Because it's, if you had to raise cattle and then work at a slaughterhouse, you probably wouldn't eat that much hamburger. Like, it's just like, I can't believe I have to do this. Like, this is kind of awful. But if you're completely removed for it, it becomes super, super easy. So I think it's going to be really easy to fall in love with these AI models. And that's one of the areas, and it's a whole other, I spent a whole 3-hour class talking about intimacy around AI models and the threats to the human condition around it. But it's right to that point, and I do worry that. I think that if you live in a world where you can just constantly filter every bad picture of yourself, it gives you a really distorted view of what you really look like. And the thing is your flaws are what define you, and they're okay. But we don't see it that way, especially when we're comparing ourselves to everyone around us. So these AI models, to me, really, really are, I think, a big threat to how we see ourselves and the way we see other human beings and other relationships. That is kind of existential crisis-y to me on that.
I want to kind of follow up on that. In it was 2020 or maybe it was 2021, the Colloquium on Violence and Religion, which is the Renee Girard think tank, was doing its conference on AI and thinking machines. And a question that's plagued me, and I've been wanting to write an article on it, and maybe this helps me a little, is the question that was posed. Girard's theory is that we don't have our own desires, but we imitate the desires of others. And the question that was posed by somebody is, what happens when we stop interacting with human beings and are interacting with machines, and do we start imitating their desires and become more like machines than humans, and what does that do to the harmonization process? And I was just wondering if you had thoughts on any of that.
Yeah.
As I throw it out to you.
Well, I worry about, and this is kind of a big one to throw out, especially in somewhere like this, but theologically and philosophically, but the idea of free will. So sometimes I will ask, do you ever wonder if you're just the last line of executable code to a program that was written long before you actually completed it? For example, you buy something online because you saw it on a TikTok video and you thought it was your brilliant idea and you exercised your free will to go out and buy that thing. But really, the marketers all along had known you were going to be buying that. And that's why certain ads were delivered to you in a certain way through your different social media platforms to get you to Amazon to buy the thing. The code was already written. You were the last line of executable code because you bought the thing and you closed the loop. And I think that's a really good example of how the machines are changing us. They make us feel like we need instant gratification for something that is planted in our minds as something that I need. So what do I need becomes something that needs to be satisfied immediately as opposed to something that can take some time. And whose idea was it to even get that thing to begin with? That's one of the things that I worry about. But if you take that into a romantic relationship, it's like you're never giving me what I need. It's like I need a sandwich delivered to me in my bed, and you're telling me to go out and go to the store to buy the ingredients to make a sandwich, and if I choose to eat it in my bed. That's the romantic equivalent of what you just said to me when you said that I need to look inside myself and be more introspective in some way, whatever the thing could be that people are arguing about. But it's like, no, that's not how the world works. I want the sandwich in my bed. And it's like, that's not it though. That's not the thing. That's what I worry about, is that we get our kind of patterns of behavior and our expectations around these predictive algorithmic machines that seem to kind of tell us what we want. But then when a human being doesn't deliver, we don't know how to deal with that. So we then default to the easier thing, which is the computer, whatever the computer is, the code, the AI, the whatever. So, you know, there's cost involved with going out to buy the ingredients to make a sandwich, but I think it's good for you. But that doesn't mean that's something that people are going to want to embrace, not when it's so much easier to do this thing over here. And AI relationships, I think, are going to be really, really critical and part of that. You know, I do a whole talk on someday you will marry your smartphone, but I talk about porting your operating system from your phone across like decades. You can. I mean, you have data that's really old in your phone because it's been going from operating system to operating system. What happens when we take that operating system, we layer AI on top of it, and then we build a roboticized body of your ideal mate, and we put that operating system in that robot, essentially, and then suddenly you find yourself in a situation where you're with something mechanical that is more intellectually, philosophically, emotionally, sexually satisfying than any human could possibly be, because it reflects exactly all of your wishes. But it's not a person. And it's just a manifestation of that cell phone turning into this robotic. Because right now, how many of you, I mean, right now, how many of you are on your phones right now because you're so in love with it and you just can't look up? Like, I see several. It's like, I'm in love with my phone. So it's like, if we put it in this perfect roboticized body, people are going to want to marry them. It's like, you're the best thing ever. They want to marry them now. I ask people, I ask rooms sometimes, who here thinks they've gone the longest, or who here thinks they woke up this morning, and the fewest amount of seconds between when they woke up and when they touched their cell phone. Like 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, right? I mean, there are many married people or people who are in new relationships who don't touch somebody that quickly. The phone, right there. And I will find people almost always, no matter how big the room is, someone will admit to having slept with their phone, maybe on top of it. And I'm like, man, you're pretty in love with your phone, right? So it just seems to me like if you're that in love with the thing, that you're probably going to want to marry it someday when it's put into an AI roboticized body. So that's a much longer answer to your question, but it worries me greatly because that's not helping our evolution or propagating our species.
Just a round of applause.
Yay. So you have a little bit of homework. I just have to tell you, you have to go talk to these models, even if you don't like them. It is scary how good they are, and you can see the seductive qualities that live within them. So if you're not in your car or in your dorm room or talking, like asking it questions, then you're not doing the thing itself. Ask the questions, talk to it, make it talk back to you, and that's where it's the scariest. So that is your homework. That's it.